Welcome to the Spacejumper podcast. My name is Jared, and I am your host. I have my friend Barry Ramirez in the house, and he is doing many things. I like I said, I don't even know how to describe what it is you do because I saw that you are an English professor. You have, a desire to learn things about the MMA community. I saw you were doing boxing and was it Muay Thai?
Muay Thai primarily.
Yeah, okay. And then you also are involved in menswear. So I thought that was really cool, and I'm glad that you came today to kind of explain to the world what it is that you do. So
That's the primary task.
You were telling me before we started that you just moved to Houston about 8 months ago. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I think it's closer to 10 now.
Okay.
But 8 or 10, yeah.
Well, very cool. Well, welcome to Houston, man. I love how diverse Houston is, and I mean, there's so much, and every corner that you turn, there's something different, and that's why I was excited. I was scrolling through your profile. Like I said, you do so much. So, what brought you to Houston?
So work primarily.
So things up to you.
Oh, apologies.
Yeah,
work primarily. So I am a professor at HCC, Houston Community College, and the primary reason why I moved to Houston was actually I was seeking a full-time position as a professor. And at the time, I was living in Bakersfield, California, which, if you don't know, is a city that's probably an hour and a half out from LA. It's kind of an agricultural city.
Right.
And I was trying to find a full-time position somewhere in California, but for one reason or another, that wasn't working out. So I decided, actually, after reading A Simple Story, maybe we can get into that, that I was actually going to try and seek a full-time position somewhere else in the country since the opportunity was not being provided to me in California. And I started applying around to Washington, Nevada, Arizona, and then eventually Texas. And it kind of worked out. The only place the only place I got interviews was actually in Texas, surprisingly.
Wow.
So Texas wanted me, apparently.
Wow. So what were you, like, what kind of positions were you applying for here?
Full-time teaching positions.
Full-time teaching positions, and you landed here in Houston. Man, I think we're lucky to have you. I love people with diverse styles, and you, sir, have a diverse style, which I really enjoy. And first off, let's say cheers. Barry actually brought us some wine today, and I love a good old Cabernet. You were telling me that I needed to let it air out. I understand, like, the people that drink wine are like, you need to air this baby out. But what exactly does that mean?
That is a good question. I am far from a connoisseur in wine, but I know just that with this particular wine, for whatever reason, it's really tart. And I've noticed that with wines that are more tart, they usually need to be aired out a lot longer in order to make it a little bit more smooth.
Yeah, and it has like a flavor change almost. Yeah.
Yeah, and since this one was vintage 2023, I figured it was probably going to be pretty tart. But
very cool. Yeah. No. Well, thank you for bringing that. And make sure that mic is real close to you.
Apologies.
No, it's okay. I'm just having a hard time pulling it up in my headphones here. And once I replay these things, it's such a pain to kind of level out the volumes. But man, that's very cool. So, do you like what you do? I mean, English is a unique topic, and you have to be very well-rounded and diverse to understand a lot of these stories that are out there and kind of interpret these words that are mashed together that normal people would just read over. But it seems like English professors and people that are involved in the, I guess, connotation in the English language and how things are put together, they kind of dive into a deeper aspect of how these words are put together and the meaning behind everything. So what brought you into that world?
So it's kind of an interesting story in that I have my bachelor's degree actually in philosophy, and I acquired that at California State University of Bakersfield. And I got to a point with philosophy where the original purpose that I wanted, the original reason why I wanted to pursue it actually didn't pan out. So I was very young. I had a naive understanding of the world, and I thought by studying philosophy, I was going to acquire truth in some way. And I actually found through taking a lot of different philosophy courses that philosophy was simply not the path because for technical reasons that we don't necessarily have to get into, if you study logic deeply enough, you get to a point where you realize that all of logic basically rests on assumptions, and anything that you claim rests on assumptions, and those rest on assumptions, and assumptions, right? So eventually I got to a point where the original purpose didn't pan out. So I was like, I can't acquire truth. Also, it happened practically that at California State University of Bakersfield, they don't offer a master's in philosophy. So I was getting a minor in English as I was pursuing my degree in philosophy, and so I decided I was going to pursue English. And I love primarily literature, although if you want to seek a profession in English and not attain a PhD, you're primarily going to be teaching composition. In other words, teaching students how to write, in particular, expository or argumentative essays. Yeah.
Man, that's interesting. You know, yeah, I always liked the art of writing, you know, and it was always fun. And I kind of like the idea of combining art and writing together, you know, in a sense where, you know, in school, you know, you're kind of taught to put, you know, words together that form sentences that make this big picture story. But you know, sometimes all these, you know, abstract words and things like that become even more meaningful, which is weird, you know, to even say that you could twist words up and make them mean something completely other than what it says.
Absolutely. Like I said, my focus was in composition, but my passion is actually in literature, in particular poetry. And I find that with a lot of people, they either really love or really hate poetry. And the vast majority of people really hate poetry. There's this famous...
I wonder why.
I think I have some ideas. But there's this very famous Polish poet. She won the Nobel Prize in 2011. Her name was Wisława. I'm probably going to butcher that for your Polish listeners. But I think it's Wisława Szymborska, I believe is how you say her name. And she said in one of her poems that about 1 in 2,000 people actually like poetry. So it's really rare. And I think it's because most people's exposure to poetry is as something that is too abstract and too confusing. And that's because they don't have the tools to properly break down a poem to understand what its meaning is. It's also the case that there's just a lot of shitty poetry.
Right, yeah.
So when poetry is very badly written, it's usually very difficult to understand. When it's very well written, it may be difficult to understand, but it leaves a lasting impact. And if you have the tools, if you understand how to break down metaphors, understand similes, understand some of the more abstract language that's used in poetry, you can actually work to make sense of it. And once you're able to do that, once you do have those tools, it changes your life, in my opinion. Wow. I could not live without poetry. I have to be honest. Yeah.
Well, I feel like I need to dive a little bit deeper into poetry because, you know, when you said 1 in 2,000, my thought was, you know, out of those 2,000, how many are aware of poetry, you know? Because it's kind of an art that, like I said, a lot of people overlook. But in reality, there's a fine section, you know, of poetry, of that art that is just mind blowing. You know, do you have anybody in mind that you really enjoy?
Yeah, actually, one of my personal heroes is another Polish poet by the name of Zbigniew Herbert. He was a very famous poet. Mid-century poet after World War II. The reason why I love him so much is not only because of his technical ability as a poet, but also because he was somebody who wrote poetry from a place of virtue, I would say. He has very honest poetry, and even in the living of his life, he was active in the Polish resistance against the Nazis and the Soviet Union. So I don't know if you know anything about the history of Poland during World War II, but they were basically invaded on both sides by, once again, Germany and Soviet Russia. So they were stuck in between these two totalitarian regimes, which of course were of very different natures. And you can kind of see this conflict working itself out in his poetry, where he's kind of taking a stand against authoritarianism, but he's also able to write poems about essentially anything, everyday, simple life experiences. And there's kind of a moral, I would say, spine or backbone to his writing that you just don't get with a lot of writers. So, yeah, he's personally just a hero of mine. I love him so much.
Yeah, and it's amazing how people have this ability to go through their day and pull out fine pieces of moments that they experience and kind of blurt it out on a piece of paper, and it just comes out so beautifully, you know? Because I don't know about you, but my days are hectic. You know, I have something going on almost every hour of the day, and it's just, I feel like I'm getting pulled in all different directions, which is good. You know, busy is good, but you know, at the same time, maybe it's just because I'm not, looking, for those pieces. But some people can just intake what they see and just convert that, like almost like AI. You know, have you used Chat GPT? It's almost like that, man. You know, it's I
think that's what makes artists special.
Yeah.
When we're talking about literature in particular, what makes poets special is that they're able to take experiences that are very common and they're able to capture them in a beautiful way so that we as readers can digest them. That is not an ability that every human being has. And it's also not something, I know you use the word kind of blurt there, but poets have to work very hard in order to write excellent poetry. It takes a long time to be actually an excellent poet, in my opinion. It's just like any other craft. Some people might think that, it's just kind of word vomit. You're just throwing out words that sound kind of sentimental in some way. But it is a craft much like any other, and it requires...
Very calculated.
Yes, very calculated, very long degree of study, a lot of reading, very wide reading. And even then, a lot of poets who do all of those things don't end up being great poets. I think it's actually, as far as literature is concerned, it is the most difficult art. I don't know if I would say it's the most difficult art generally, because I think probably music, which mixes poetry and instrument ability, depending, of course, on the genre of music that an artist might be engaged in. But as far as literature is concerned, poetry is the most difficult.
Yeah, I mean, 'cause that's almost like you're alone in your mind, and you're making this creation that's, like meaningful. It's impactful to to the not only the author but the readers as well, which is very magical. It's a very magical thing. Yeah.
I love that word. Yeah. Anytime my students come to a literature course of mine, I always try to describe the way in which literature is magical, and I think the way that our public education system teaches literature, teaches it often in a way that gets rid of the magic, right? But the ability to use words to modulate or change the thoughts in another person's mind through the form of either a novel, a short story, or a poem is exactly that. It's magic, right? It's almost like a sorcerer casting their spell on you, transforming your mind and your thinking about the world. It's an absolutely beautiful art.
It is a beautiful art. I would have to agree. And where, I think at the beginning of this conversation, we started off by getting into how you came to Houston, and then we kind of dove into the literature side of things. And I believe from, doing a little research on you, that the literature is kind of the pressure that made the move to Houston. And so you came from California to Texas because I saw you read something?
Yeah, exactly. So I read a small folktale that was, I should say, rewritten by the famous Italian author Italo Calvino. So I say rewritten because folktales are exactly that. They're oral stories that are told over time and kept alive by people telling them orally, not necessarily writing them down, but he wrote this particular one down. And it's a folktale called Dauntless Little John. And I could retell the story here. It's pretty short. If you want to hear it.
Yeah, sure. I would actually love to.
In order to make sense of this story, you have to kind of hear it. And I love teaching this story in class and talking to my students about this. But so the story goes basically like this. There was once a lad whose name was Dauntless Little John, and he wafted about the world aimlessly as if he was on a magical carpet. And one day he alighted at an inn, and he asked the innkeeper, "Can I stay in the inn?" And the innkeeper basically told him, "We don't have any room, but there is a haunted palace down the road if you want to go." That being said, everybody who has gone to this haunted palace has never returned. In the morning, they find the bodies of these people, and they are basically taken out by the priests of the village. And so Dauntless Little John, being dauntless, says, "Sure." And so what does he do? He packs in a knapsack a bottle of wine. Cheers.
Cheers.
a bottle of wine, a piece of sausage, and a lamp. He puts it in a knapsack over his back, and he walks off to this haunted palace. He sits down at a table before a fireplace. And as he's sitting there sipping his wine very cozily, he hears a voice coming down the chimney, kind of a wobbly, ghost-like voice. And it asks dauntless little John, should I throw it down? And he says, sure. And down the chimney comes tumbling an arm. And then he hears the voice again, shall I throw it down? Sure, he says. Down comes tumbling another arm. He eats a piece of his sausage. Shall I throw it down? Sure. Comes tumbling down the trunk of the body, then the legs, and eventually the head. And assembles before little John is this giant or this ogre. And as soon as it assembles, he just basically takes his glass of wine. He says, cheers.
Oh, cheers.
Then what happens is the ogre or the giant starts to try to give him orders. He says, I want you to take the lamp and I want you to walk before me. And dauntless little John says no. And the giant insists. And dauntless little John says no. And so the giant walks in front of him and goes to a door underneath a staircase, which leads to the basement. And he tells dauntless little John, you need to go down into the basement. And he says, no. And so the giant goes down before him. When they get into the basement, the giant tells him, you need to lift up these tiles because there's 3 pots of gold under the tiles. What do you think?
Sorry, that was louder
That's
than I thought.
What do you think dauntless little John says?
Yes.
No. Dauntless little John says no. And then gets the 3 pots. Aussie. Larry. Is it Larry?
Yeah.
Larry. Sit down, Larry. The 3 pots of gold, and the giant tries to instruct him to take them up. Again, he says no. And eventually, when they get all of the pots of gold back up, the giant tells him, now you have broken the spell. And his body starts to break down and then go right back up the chimney. You like dauntless little John,
yeah,
don't
he
you?
does.
And then what ends up happening is basically, because dauntless little John breaks the spell, he gets to keep 1 pot of gold. The other pot of gold is for the next person that comes to the palace. And then the last pot of gold is for the priest that were supposed to come pick up his body the next day. And he actually wins the palace itself. Now, you might be thinking at this point, what the fuck is the meaning of this story? And that's exactly what I thought the first time I read it. But then I read it the second time and looked at it more symbolically. And then I had an aha moment. I understood exactly what this story meant. So the giant, in this case, represents generally fear, the things that we fear in life. And dauntless little John, towards the end of the story, is actually able to reap his reward. Why? Because he is dauntless. He's fearless. He's courageous. At every turn that the giant tried to demand dauntless little John to do something, what did he say? No. In other words, I'm not going to allow fear to dictate my action. And if I don't allow fear to dictate my action, then I will reap the rewards that I want in life. So I was sitting on my couch thinking about this, and I was thinking, examining myself, in what way am I honestly being a coward in my life? And if you want to have a serious conversation with yourself, that is a good one to have. In what way am I being a coward? And there were a lot of ways that I identified, but one of the primary ones was actually that I was acting with cowardice in pursuing my particular profession. I'd wanted to be a full-time professor for a very long time. And I had, when I first set out on this journey, told myself in 5 years I want to have a full-time position so that I have a degree of security. And it became clear to me that that wasn't happening. And so I asked myself, well, why is that? And the real reason is because I didn't want to go through the interview process, which was very daunting for me. Because I don't know if you know anything about the interview process for being a professor, but typically what you have to do is you have to go through and first and foremost, you have to do a teaching demonstration in front of 5 to 7 colleagues or professors at that particular institution. Right. And then you have to sit before a panel with the president of the college, and they basically give you a grilling for an hour, asking all kinds of questions concerning your teaching philosophy, what way you think you're going to be an addition to the college, all of that. So even the thought of that caused extreme trepidation for me, caused a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear. And for a long time, I just didn't pursue it, although I didn't tell myself that, because I was afraid of it.
Right.
And so I said, well, fuck it.
Yeah.
Fuck it.
Yeah.
I'm going to confront this fear like dauntless little John. I'm not going to let this giant, this ogre, dictate what it is that I'm going to do. And so from that, I started applying to jobs around the country, as I said previously. Wow. And it's a very interesting story because I basically only got 2 interviews. One was for Odessa College, which I'm not sure if you're familiar, but is in West Texas, and then in Houston. And the way it played out was kind of funny because Odessa College was very interested, seemingly, in having me as a professor there because they decided that they were going to fly me out for the interview. So I thought that the interview went very well with Odessa. We did at first an online interview, and they decided, we're going to fly you out for a second interview, and then we're going to go through your teaching demonstration, the whole thing. So I'm thinking, I got this job lined up, right? Well, the day before I left to Odessa, I also had an interview with HCC, Houston Community College. And the first interview went, in my personal opinion, horribly, because they asked me a lot of questions that I just did not have the answers for right off the back. However, towards the end of the interview, I got to do a teaching demonstration, which went really well. But at the time, I was thinking, like, there's no fucking way. Yeah. Like, I just felt it in my gut. I was like, there is no fucking way. Mm-hmm. And I told my fiance, there's no way I'm going to get this job. There's no way. I could just feel it. And so I fly off to Odessa, and as I'm actually on the plane there, I get a email from Houston Community College basically saying that they want a second interview with me.
Wow.
And interestingly, the interview is on the same day as the interview for Odessa College, but it's just an hour after.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so here I am in Odessa. I go through the whole thing, and I thought I did phenomenal. So I went through the teaching demonstration, did really well, went through the hour grilling with the colleagues and the professor, the whole thing, and the president, and I thought it went really well. I thought, I'm probably going to end up getting this job. But after the interview, they're basically like, well, we'll contact you by tomorrow. I was like, oh, okay. But an hour after that, I had the interview with HCC, and because I was already warmed up from spending all of this time interviewing for Odessa, when it came to do the interview for HCC, fucking killed it.
Nice.
Killed it. And I knew right then, I was like, I'm going to get this job. I actually thought I was going to get both. But Odessa basically said, no, we're not interested. And HCC said yes.
Wow.
So I was...
Well, Odessa definitely missed out. And Houston is thriving because you're here.
Sorry, that was a long story.
No. That's exciting, man. That was a great story because, that just goes to show you that, I feel like my philosophy is everything happens for a reason, and I know that's such a basic term, thing that's thrown around, but, in reality, I mean, I start thinking, I am sitting here because of every decision that I've ever made, like everything adds up and everything leads to this moment, and I think it's just, I think it's amazing, man. Yeah. So, how is that going at Houston Community College?
Well, do you mind if I ask you a question?
Sure.
So why is it that you moved from Beaumont to Houston?
Well, opportunities. Beaumont's a small city, and there's not a lot going on there as far as opportunity levels. It's just the same old thing. But in Houston, like I said, every turn you make, there's something new. And of course, I'm in the medical field and involved in cancer research. So Houston is the absolute best spot for that. It's such a unique hub for talent all across the United States and all across the world, really. I mean, people are flocking to Houston to get to work with some of the highest quality technology and things like that. So it's very cool. But yeah, for why I moved to Houston, I initially I was living over there, and I got my master's degree in biology. And, I thought I was going to go to medical school. And so I came over here. I got a job. I was studying for the MCAT. I got a job in sales. I was selling air conditioning units. And, I went from selling air conditioning units. I found out sales really wasn't the best spot for me. I moved to 8th grade. I was an 8th grade science teacher, which was a unique experience, to say the least, because I mean, some of the stuff that I would see in these schools around here, in these middle schools, is just, I mean, it's just crazy, you know, and especially after COVID, I feel like a lot of the students, you know, had a couple years off, like staying at home, and so it kind of, their education didn't quite develop. I had, you know, people in middle school who couldn't read or write and things like that. I mean, it was it took a hit, the education system in general as far as COVID, but anyways, I figured education wasn't the best spot for me. And then I ended up getting a job in research. So that's where I'm at now. And I've been there for almost 2 years. But yeah, even if I wasn't, let's say, you know, none of those things happened, I could kick a rock on the sidewalk and find a position somewhere, you know, whether it's waiting tables or, you know, bartending. I mean, you know, just there's something everywhere in Houston, you know? So yeah, any big city is such a great spot for anybody that's looking to step out of their comfort zone and see what else is out there for them, because I mean, there's so much, you know? Yeah. So,
and I have to say that was one of the things that went through my mind in moving to Houston, because I've only ever lived in California. I come from a very small city, Porterville, California, which is cow town, really, about 50,000 people. I didn't move to Bakersfield until I was actually pursuing my master's degree. That's significantly larger at about 500,000 people.
Wow.
But I've never lived anywhere other than California. So I was like, man, I'm about to make this massive move halfway across the country. And of course you have those thoughts like, what if I fail? What if I don't make it? And then I just turned that thinking on its head. It said, well, what if I never try?
Yeah.
Like the idea that there's people, they generally only consider the risk of doing something. They don't consider the risk of not doing something.
Right. Exactly.
So what is the risk of me staying here? What if I get stuck in this pattern of life and I get stuck here for the rest of my life? And as soon as I thought that, I just, fuck it.
Yeah. That's when you put the shoes on and get going, you know?
Yeah, it's like here, if I fail, well, I could probably find something else to do. And I probably won't fail because I'm a competent individual.
Right.
And I've, you know, been a teacher at that point for over 6 years. So the likelihood that I would fail is not there. It's not very high anyway.
Right.
But even if it does, at least I'll be in a better place where there's more opportunity. So I'll figure something out.
Right.
You know.
Well, how is it so far? I mean, are you enjoying it over there? I mean, you're still there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I love Houston Community College. I really love it. I feel like the teaching is going well. I will say that the first semester was a little bit rocky because, of course, there was just so much going on in my life.
Right.
Moving here, I had only been to Texas once before, and it was for that interview in Odessa.
Right.
I never even visited Houston.
Wow. Oh,
whatsoever.
So the interview was online?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
For Houston. I actually had the interview for Houston in Odessa.
Okay.
I was in a dorm in Odessa.
Wow. Isn't it funny how things work out?
It was crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, it makes so much sense looking back.
Yeah.
And of course, I have that kind of like literary mind where I'm thinking like this makes sense for my character development, you know. But
yeah, everything adds up. Yeah, it is magical. Yeah. Well, that's very interesting. So what got you started on this menswear enthusiasm? You know, why? I mean, you have your page, your YouTube is covered in all kinds of advice and all kinds of tips and things for people that don't know how to style, you know, quite right, or I really don't know how to describe that. I mean, I'm talking from my eyes, you know, because I don't know how to style some of the stuff that I see your videos doing, and it is very inspirational. So how'd you get on that kick?
yeah, so it kind of runs parallel to my career pursuits, actually.
Let me just go ahead and say, everybody that is involved in fashion is always so brilliant. Like, I mean, everybody that I talk to that has an interest in
not talking about me, sir.
In fashion, or you know, you guys always speak well, and I mean, honestly, it's very there's a commonality there, and I'm trying to figure it out. I'm gonna have to get into my style there. Maybe it'll increase my IQ a little bit.
So as I was saying, it runs parallel with my career pursuits. So I always had a bad relationship to style. So I'm somebody that comes from a very interesting family background. I am one of 12 members in a family.
Wow. And
of my massive family, every single one of my 9 brothers and sisters are adopted.
Wow.
So as hard as my parents tried to give us the very nice things in life, unfortunately, at a certain point, that ran into its head because it's difficult to afford to raise that many children and give them new and nice things. So growing up, a lot of stuff that I wore was basically hand-me-downs. And of course, when you're very young, you don't think about that very much. But when I eventually went on to high school, I would say my freshman and sophomore year, I kind of really tried to like fit in with what everybody else was wearing. And this is in, I guess, I graduated in 2008. So that would have been what, 2004, 2005. It was kind of very like skater, kind of white boy skater style. And then eventually I got to a point where probably due to teenage angst, I decided that I wanted to stand out. And the way that I tried to stand out was actually just by rebelling against societal standards, whatever form they would take. And one way was through actually clothing and fashion. So very often I'd go to school and just wear like pajamas, kind of very smugly and naively thinking, oh, I'm above it all, right? I don't have to wear what everybody else wears. I can wear pajamas. I don't care about your standards, what anybody thinks about me. And I started to mature, as one does eventually. And when I eventually decided that I was going to pursue a professional career as a professor, I knew one thing that I needed to work on was actually my style, my presentation in the classroom. And so that is really where it began. I would say probably that's somewhere like 2018, 2019. I started to get interested in style. And so I was like, well, I need to look professional. And I had a very vague idea as to what professional was, like, I guess, like suits and ties, you know, something like that. And so I started to purchase these items, and I've always had a philosophical mind. So I always want to ask the question, why? So as I'm putting on this tie, I'm thinking, well, why am I wearing this tie with this kind of shirt? Why this color and not that color? Why this particular garment and not that particular garment? And what I started to actually find out, unearth, is that there are principles at work, at least in the realm of classic style, which is what I pursue and am interested in. And I started to try to kind of like unlock these principles. Like, why does that particular outfit, I'd see somebody on Instagram in a nice suit and tie, why does that look good, but what I'm wearing doesn't actually look good? And what I started to unearth again is that there's just principles at work. And I started to become more and more acquainted with them, and started to try to apply them to my life. And I decided, well, it would be kind of cool to create a passion page on Instagram. And that's what I started doing. At first, it was just me posting like pictures from basically my chin to the top of my waistband with whatever tie it was that I was wearing. Eventually, I evolved to kind of full outfits. And then eventually my style improved, and I decided, well, this was at the beginning of the pandemic, I'm going to go ahead and try to make a YouTube page teaching people about style, with the understanding that I'm not an expert, I'm simply an enthusiast, somebody who's very passionate about this topic, and I could hopefully teach people along the way just the lessons I've learned primarily from my mistakes, because again, I don't have any expertise necessarily in style or fashion. And so that's kind of like over time evolved into more or less what my Instagram is today.
Wow. And I mean, you're over 10K now. I mean, that's impressive. I mean,
sir, I am at 13. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, that's impressive. You know, I'm sitting at a whopping 154 today, baby. Yeah. You know, I started this thing about
everything starts that way though. Yeah. You know what I mean? That I started that same way.
I love that though. You know, I love the, you know, because I feel like a lot of people think or expect things to be given, you know, but you know, I saw that you had, you know, almost 300 videos on YouTube. You know, I mean, these things, it takes consistency to kind of get to a point of recognition and things like that. I mean, things aren't given, you know, and I don't take that lightly, because I understand what it takes to win, you know, and it's not overnight, you know, it's daily. It's every decision leads up to another decision, and you have to make good decisions, you know. Yeah. So,
and the truth is too, you don't really receive compensation, so to speak, for the choices that you're making in the present. That's what makes it so difficult for people to be consistent. Yeah. And I'm only just now, and by just now I mean within the last 6 months, actually starting to make money from my social media ventures, both on YouTube and Instagram. Like I've had at least one paid partnership.
Oh,
but
wow.
Look,
That's really cool.
yeah, but I'm not saying that in praise of myself. I'm
Yeah.
saying that it took me over 3 years to get there.
Right.
Like you're probably gonna get there a lot faster than I did.
I don't know. I mean, like I said, 154. It's a
You'll get there.
It's a long ways from 13.2. You know.
But if you tell most people that at the beginning, like how many people are actually going to start? Like if you've told
Right,
somebody
yeah.
you can start this venture and you're not going to receive any compensation, you're going to have to dump your money into purchasing all of this equipment.
Right.
You're going to have to put in the hours of work, all the frustration, all the mistakes, feeling like you're being mocked by other people, sometimes even actually being
Yeah,
mocked
honestly,
by
yeah.
other people. You're going to put up with all of that. But in 3 years from now, you'll receive some compensation for it. Most people won't do it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And it seems like you have that kind of grit where you're gonna get it.
Well, here's the thing. I was prepared to go to medical school, you know, and it's not a light task. I mean, that's
least.
late nights and early mornings of studying and taking tests and going through test anxiety, and then not to mention doing rotations that take a lot of time, you know. So, you know, and that's only in medical school. That's 4 years of no compensation, no recognition. That's just straight being like grunt work, you know, as in medicine. And then you get out, and then you have another 4 years that's involved in residency and working under somebody and only getting paid $50K a year. And so now you're 8 years into it. Then some people do another 4 years of working under somebody for an extra prestigious, you know, viewing. But yeah, I mean, that's 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of medical school, 4 years of residency, and another 4 years possibly that's optional. So, you know, that's, you know, 16 years. And at the end of 16 years, then, you know, people say, oh, you know, here's where I'm at now. And I'm like, man, you know, anybody that puts their mind to something and does it consistently for 16 years is going to be good. So my problem was, what is it that I want to do? You know, and that just goes for anybody that may be listening that's confused on what they want to do. I mean, you got to really find out what it is that you want to do and do that, you know, and finding out what that was the hardest part for me, because there's so much, you know, like I said, every decision leads to another decision, but what decision do you want to make and which route do you want to go? Because there's not a limit on it. I mean, you could turn, you know, 360 degrees and take a step whichever way you want. But at the end of the day, do these steps add up? And that was the hardest part for me, you know. And, you know, it was almost expected that I go to medical school from family, and I had already hyped myself up with my friends and said, oh, you know, I'm going to go into medicine. I'm going to do this. And, you know, at the time I was like, oh yeah, I may go get my PhD and do MD, PhD and yada, yada, yada. And at the bottom of all of these expectations and almost lies to myself, I knew deep down I didn't want any of that, you know, and it was just almost an expectation.
Do you have family that's involved in medicine? Do you have
I do, yeah.
doctor in your family? Or?
Yeah. I have a bunch of people in the medical field. I have optometrists. I have people that are in anesthesia, and it's a pretty big family full of medical personnel, you know, in some form or fashion. So I just, you know, and like I said, being a doctor is really prestigious. So I wanted to be that guy, you know, and you know, recently my dad passed away about a year and a half ago, and I told him, I was like, you know, I want to do this and I want to do that, and he was like, well, look, stop talking about it, just do it, you know, like if you want to do something, do it, you know. And so that was in the process of where I was, you know, thinking about the podcast and things like that. And so that's how this thing arose. I was like, you know what? I'm just not going to even talk about it. I'm just going to do it. So I pieced it together over the past year, and getting every paycheck, I would get an arm and you know, the mic or a wire, a couple wires. And so it's finally coming together. And now here we are. I'm you're sitting in front of me now, and we are on episode 21, which is
congratulations.
Yeah. So, and I have no plans on stopping anytime soon. I was telling you before we started, I love people. I love to hear people's stories, and so yeah, I'm excited, man.
I say keep going.
Yeah,
it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, we're not going to stop. I mean, and and everything takes skill. You start off as a doctor, you're going to need you need that 4 years to learn. You need that 4 years to
it's an apprenticeship.
To
same with anything,
right? To be the best that you could be, and I do have an understanding that things take time, and there's a full building process behind things, and if you believe in something, then do it, and that's why your channel was really cool to me, because I feel like you're just being your whole self, and you're able to express your style. And it was really interesting knowing that you like poetry, because it kind of paints this huge, diverse, full circle around who you are, and that's really cool. So, I know you said that you just started making money off of this through social media platforms, but you're also doing like style consultations, right?
I have done them.
Okay.
That hasn't picked up. So
okay.
I've kind of had a client here or there, but unfortunately, that part hasn't picked up a little bit too much. So I'm still kind of in my own apprenticeship stage as far as being a stylist is concerned.
Well, hey, keep going. Hey, why don't you finish that wine off and try some of this freak show?
All right.
So I have a story, actually.
It's not going to make me twerk or something.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I'll tell you the story before we get into it, because the first time I ever had this freak show, my family, they're wine drinkers. They love wine. Well, freak show is only $13, $14. I may be cutting it a little short, but it's a very good wine, and it runs with the best of them. But it's I think that one's like 15%. And the first time that I had it, I was at Vic and Anthony's. My brother and his wife brought me for my birthday. And
is that a place here in Houston, Vic and Anthony's?
Vic and Anthony's is like a very high-end lounge, and this was actually in Lake Charles at the Nugget, I want to say, at the casino. You haven't been to Louisiana yet, huh?
I have not.
You need to make a trip over there. They have it's called the Golden Nugget. It's a nice casino. They have restaurants and bars in there. They have a pool if you just want to lounge and kind of relax, drink. It's perfect time for the summer. But yeah. We went over there, and it's a real high-end lounge, and we're sitting there. I met them in their room because we're staying there, and they had I think maybe a couple bottles of Freak Show. Well, it was my birthday, so I was kind of getting a little crazy. I think I drank the whole thing, honestly, and that's the last that I remembered. And I was sitting in this high-end lounge, and we're at a booth. A very, very proper waiter is waiting on us, and it's a very nice establishment. Well, me, I was 3 sheets to the wind at that point. And so I had ordered a lobster pasta, and then the lobster came out, and man, it was an amazing lobster. It was so good that I look at my brother and I'm like, man, you got to try this lobster. And I just tossed it to him, hit him in the chest, fell on the ground. He picks it up, and it's a lobster. So he peels it off and eats it. It was maybe it was lobster mac and cheese. I don't know, but either way, it was a good experience to say the least. The morning wasn't very good, but yeah, freak show will do it to you.
The morning after wine, it can be vicious if you drink too much wine.
Oh man, yeah, I'm a big fan of margaritas. If there's margaritas and salsa, chips and salsa involved, oh my god.
I hadn't had a margarita probably since I was like a sophomore in high school.
Really? And that's those California margaritas.
But
them babies.
I had one here
We
at
need to get
Escalante's. Have you been to Escalante's? The restaurant here?
Mm-mm.
It's like a Tex-Mex place. And I absolutely love this place. The only reason being is because as I was waiting outside to be seated, the bartender came out and handed me a margarita.
Oh, wow.
I've never had that happen before. At all the restaurants that I went to, I was like, why can't they just serve me a glass of wine while I'm waiting?
Right.
And here comes this guy, and he serves me a margarita. I said, I'm coming back to Escalante's.
Exactly.
If you're going to serve me a margarita while I'm waiting, I'm coming back.
Man, I love them. There's a place, Papacitos. Have you been to Papacitos? Papacitos is a chain. I used to work for the seafood side of things. Oh, it's another one of their branches is called Papado. It's Papado Seafood. And then they have Papacitos. And Papacitos is like a Tex-Mex style place. And yeah, everything at these places are good. I mean, like I said, I used to work at Papado, I'm sorry. And their kitchens were the cleanest kitchens I've ever seen in my life. Mm-hmm. Before you would leave, they would come around with a black light in the kitchen and make sure that everything was perfectly wiped off the countertops. I mean, after working there, I've worked at a lot of restaurants. That's probably one of the very few that I would actually go to and return to. Yeah. Yeah. Shout out to all the Papa's restaurant. Yeah.
Going through with the black light.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, right? But some of those cooks, man, you never know. They need to put that black light away. You never know what they're finding.
A lot of people here talk about how great the food culture is, and I have to say, like, I'm not a foodie, not because I don't love eating food, but because I have a pretty restrictive diet. And that's also part of the reason why if I'm going to drink, I primarily drink wine. Although I went on a pretty severe, shall I say, beer connoisseur ship over the last 6 months or so. I love beer so much. It tastes so much better than wine.
I love beer. I love beer. I
love a good pale ale on a hot day. Oh
it'll bloat me a little bit too, though. Like I got to watch out.
That's the thing. I get fat.
Yeah.
I start to get fat. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't know. Should I be doing this?
Man, there's a guy on Instagram that he pops across my feed every now and then, but he's like, I've tried 13,000 wines across the United States, and here's my top 5. Or he does things like that. I'll send him if he comes. I don't know his actual username. I wish I did, but if he pops across my my feed, I'll send it to you. He's a really good guy to check out for beer.
Absolutely.
But yeah, no, I like wine. I like beer. I like tequila. Obviously, tequila is probably my favorite.
Yeah. What do we got over here?
Yeah, it's just some
just some $1,000 tequila.
No. That's like I think that bottle was $20. Some Luna Azul.
I've had some bad experiences on tequila, I have to say. Yeah. Especially when I was really young. Me and Jose, we were good friends for a short time. And,
well, Jose will do it to you. Yeah, that's yeah, I had a couple experiences in Mexico on a cruise with some Jose, and it wasn't pretty actually. It wasn't very good, but yeah, some Dramamine was my friend on that thing. But yeah, that's Luna Azul's kind of what a lot of the restaurants around here give for their house tequila, and it's good. My favorite tequila is Clase Azul.
Clase.
Yeah.
Have you ever had? There was this organic. I'm very big into organic stuff.
Yeah,
you might have
like
noticed.
Organic,
but there was like this organic wine that I was thinking about testing out. I think it was like Casa Blanco, maybe. Ooh. I can't remember off the top of my head. Maybe you don't know what I'm talking about.
Anything Blanco is good.
What does that even mean?
Blanco means white. It's like clear. It's like for the clear tequila.
Okay.
And then they have Reposado, which is like the brown, kind of like brown tequila.
Oh, okay.
You were talking about tequila, right?
Yeah.
And then they have another name for types of tequila. Actually, let me just ask. I have good old Chat GPT right here.
Where you at? What is the guy on Joe Rogan? What's his name?
Oh, Jamie.
Yeah, Jamie. Where you at, Jamie?
Young Jamie.
We need a Jamie up in here. That's the next investment.
I know. Let's see. What types of tequilas are there?
Asking the profound questions. Ask AI.
Let's take a look.
Before it takes us over.
So Blanco, they have it's silver or white. Joven, I didn't even know that was a thing. Joven. Gold or young. Reposado means rested. Anejo, aged. Extra anejo, extra aged. There's actually a lot. Mixto contains 51% blue agave sugars. And then Cristalino. I don't know, that sounds too fancy for me. I'll take the Blanco.
By the way, this Fear Show is good. This is smooth.
I know, it's very smooth, yeah. Cheers again. Well, thanks for coming, man. It's we're not tying it up just yet, but but that sip of wine made me want to say thanks. Yeah, yeah, I know.
You're welcome.
I'm glad his reflexes
you
are good.
Athletic, sir. You need to join the Dog Olympics.
I know, right? Yeah.
What do they call that? Don't they have like those pet shows where the dogs do like courses?
I think there was one recently here at NRG Stadium.
Really?
Yeah.
I should have gone.
I know, right? Dude, we have to get you a dog.
I am inclined. The only reason why I'm hesitant is we lost our dog actually before we moved here, and that dog was my soul dog. His name was actually Herbert. He was named after my favorite poet, Zebedee Herbert, and he was I got to show you a picture.
Yeah.
He even looked like me. You know how sometimes that's the case where like dogs will look like their owners.
Right.
I feel like he kind of like looked at that.
Oh my God! What a cutie.
Show it to the camera.
Yeah, it turned off, but yeah. Oh my God.
Your viewers must see Herbert, the great Herbert. Yeah, he was my soul dog. I loved him very much. Unfortunately, he got lymphoma, and we tried to save him, but we're unsuccessful in doing so. And that was like just shortly before we moved here. So I've been very like hesitant on getting a dog, but I kind of feel like at the same time it's kind of like time. Anytime I see a dog, I'm like, man, I want a dog so bad.
Yeah, and they're necessary. Larry's my best friend. I mean, I know he runs around here and he's real spoiled and everything, but man, I love him so much. He's my running buddy. He's my, I mean, if I'm having a bad day, he could sense it. He's just like there, you know.
He's very affectionate. My dog Herbert wasn't necessarily the same way. He wasn't like extremely affectionate. We got him from a shelter, and I suspect that there was probably some abuse before we actually got him. So he was kind of like not as affectionate as he could have been. Right. But it's the same thing, you know. There's something magical about having a dog. Like no matter how bad your day is, you come home and here's this creature here, just so excited to see you. It just makes everything better.
Yeah,
you know?
I love
They just
dogs
make
so
everything
much.
better.
Yeah,
The greatest creatures.
I had a dog. My mother has him now. His name is Jordan. He's probably related to Larry in some sort of way, but yeah, he's the sweetest little guy. I mean, he helped me through so much. I mean, you know, just as a, you know, he was around as I was growing and you know, trying to figure things out and man, he just helped me emotionally through so much, you know, and he didn't have to be like a registered, you know, a more emotional support dog or anything, but he was like, and it was so necessary. But yeah, my mom spoils him to death. So yeah, in you know, I moved to Houston and my mom was like, do you want to take Jordan? And I was like, no, I can't. I love Jordan, but he's so safe there, you know, like, and you know, here I'm gone, you know, most of the day, you know, and Larry, he was kind of born into that. So he doesn't know any different. Jordan, he gets affection all the time. And so if he came over here with me, he'd be like, I am like alone by myself for 8 hours a day. Are you kidding me? You know, so.
And a lot of people, I mean, not you, but a lot of people just forget that dogs are social animals. Like you can't not, you know, it's not like you can just throw them in the backyard and not interact with them.
Yeah.
They're social animals. The reason why we're able to actually form a bond and relationship with them is because they have similar social structures to us. That's the only way we're able to relate to them, you know? Human beings move in tribes, dogs move in packs. You know, we have very similar social structures and organizations that make us relatable to them. Cats are very different. That's why they're like
so different.
Very different. They're independent. They're of themselves. Cats in the wild, you know, they don't move in packs like that. They don't necessarily require the same social structure. It's fascinating.
Isn't it weird how that works?
Yeah,
you know?
it is.
Like animal behavior.
I honestly can't understand how it is that somebody would just like cats. I can understand how somebody would like dogs and cats, but just to like cats, I don't know. That strikes me as a little bit strange. Because for me personally, I like pets who are affectionate, who I feel like I'm kind of like in a non-romantic relationship with. And with cats, it's just kind of like, fuck you, I don't really need you, you know? You're just kind of like my source of food, you know?
Man, cats are so crazy, man. I had a cat one time and he did not like living with me. He wanted to go outside and reproduce. And I was like, all right, yeah. Help yourself.
I'm going to guess he was a male.
He was a male.
Okay.
Yeah, he was a crazy guy. He was an asshole. I named him Trump. Yeah, he was probably paying.
Was he orange?
Yeah. Well, no. He was gray. He was
Billions.
Yeah. Yeah. He was getting caught up in cat court, for giving some hush money to the cats. Yeah, there was some lust going on in that neighborhood. But yeah, man, you're doing some really interesting stuff. And another thing that I was watching earlier is you were talking about the power of dressing well. And I think that that's very important because a lot of people don't really think about this. You know, a lot of people kind of brush clothing off as just clothing, you know, but clothing actually can enhance somebody, you know, enhance their personality, enhance their confidence, and enhance who they how they are viewed, you know. So what is your input on the power of dressing well?
Well, the importance of dressing well, in my personal opinion, is that it gives you a degree of control over what people think of you. So much of our social lives and people's judgment of us is, to a large extent, outside of our control. But the beautiful thing about style, it's kind of a little bit of sorcery. I'm thinking back here to kind of like poetry in the same way, right? Where what you wear can actually modulate people's understanding of you. And so whether you are interested in pursuing a more professional career, you want to dress more professionally so that you can enhance your image to hopefully attain your career goals, or if you want to be somebody who's kind of like popular or a rock star, right? You still have to manage your image. So no matter what style it is that you are choosing to pursue, whether it's classic menswear or you're thinking more of street fashion or casual style, whatever it is, the reason why that's important is because, again, it gives you control over people's perception of you. And sometimes people are just neglectful of the fact that clothing actually has meaning, and it carries with it the power to change people's thinking about you, I suppose.
Yeah, and I just feel so confident when I have good clothing on, you know.
There's nothing like wearing a suit in public.
Yeah, I agree, you know. and people approach you differently, you know, and it's almost a respect thing, you know, and you know, because if I'm wearing a black hoodie right now with some Jordans that don't look like they've had any scuffs on them in ages, but you know, if I walk out like this versus if I walk out in a nice luxurious look, you know, the way that people approach you is completely different. You know, even if you sit down at a restaurant, you know, hello sir, you know, versus you know, what do you want? You know,
right.
You want a beer or something? You know.
But it also depends on place, right? Because there are probably places where wearing what it is that you're wearing, you would be looked at as being in jive with the environment. Whereas if I walked in with a suit to a bar, people are going to look at me a little bit odd. Like, why is he? Might think of me as being something like try hard or something like that.
Not in Houston though. Houston's real giving. I mean, here's the thing about Houston, from what I've noticed, is I feel like anything goes, you know, like I feel like it's a good spot to be yourself, you know. And how different is Houston from California?
I'm glad you asked me that question. Before I answer this question, what is your perspective on Californians? Because I've heard a lot of different things from a lot of Texans. Some people are kind of like, whatever, you know, you're from California, no big deal. And then there's people who despise Californians for various reasons. I'm curious what your thoughts are. And you're not going to hurt my feelings, by the way. So feel free to say whatever it is you want to say.
Well, if I see a California license plate...
That was one of the... I had to get that changed so fast. I knew people were giving me smug looks in traffic because of the license plate. I was like,
if I see a California license plate, I can't help it. My middle finger just tends to pop up, like, and it's just like a mind of its own, you know. But you know, other than that, I don't, you know. In your case, it was kind of, it seemed to be kind of by random chance that you ended up here in Texas, but in general, I don't blame people from moving from California to Texas just because the structure, you know, I've never been to California. I have friends that live in California now and they love it. My boy Trent is in Sacramento right now. He's actually training under Uriah Faber.
I heard you talk about that.
Yeah. I love Trent, man. That's my boy right there. But anyways, yeah. So I have nothing against people from California, but like I said, there is that if the license plate's on there.
It seems like some Texans, they don't like Californians purely for practical reasons. It's like, stop moving here because there's too much traffic. And then it seems like there are other Texans who are like, don't move to Texas because you're going to liberalize, so to speak, Texas. And I have to say that one of my attractions to Texas, it wasn't merely random. I tend to have a little bit more conservative bent in my personality. So it's kind of funny. Sometimes I meet Texans, and I think that if you looked at my philosophy and my beliefs, are probably more in line with what a stereotypical Texan would be than a lot of Texans, actually. But there are a lot of stark differences. It's one of the things that I noticed when I moved here is that, how do I put it? Houston's a significantly better city than Bakersfield, where I moved from, but it's not perfect. And it seems to me like there's just a series of trade-offs. What do you want with your life, right? So generally speaking, in California, you do not have to worry so much, for example, about gun crime, because of course, guns are not as easily attainable as they are in Texas, Texas being a constitutional carry state. Interestingly enough, Texas and California have roughly the same population. I think California might have 1 million or more people, but they have half the amount of firearms. There's about 500,000 plus firearms in California. There's over 1 million in Texas. And for me, there's a trade-off, right? So the benefit of living in Texas is that you get to carry a firearm, which means that in the event that somebody wants to harm you, you are able to defend yourself. But it stands to reason that if there are more guns, there's likely going to be an uptick in gun crime. So it's a trade-off. What do you want? Personally, I'll take the right to carry a gun and to be able to defend myself and accept that there's going to be some degree of risk with people having firearms who maybe shouldn't have a firearm.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing also, for example, with gas, right? Significant difference in cost between gas. Right now, I think gas is like, it's under $3 at most gas stations.
Yeah. Maybe like $2.79, I'm guessing. But
yeah, about there. So gas is more affordable. But what I notice is that the roads here are horrendous. They're absolutely shitty. So I don't know exactly what California is doing with all the taxes that you pay in addition to the price for gas itself. I assume some of that's going to the infrastructure, building roads. And so it's a trade-off. Well, what do you want? Do you want extremely great roads, or do you want cheap gas? I'll take the trade-off. I will accept the gas, right? And then also there's kind of the weather here, of course. The weather here is, for the most part, atrocious.
Yeah, well, to be fair, the past 8 months here in Houston have been nuts. Like, I mean, I've been in Southeast Texas my whole life, and I have never seen the weather this weird.
Really?
Yes. And I don't know. I mean, it's...
How far is Beaumont from Houston?
About an hour and 15 minutes.
Oh, okay, so it's about the same weather.
Yeah, same weather. Yeah, and like I said, I've never seen the weather this crazy. And of course, yeah, they've had some flooding issues and things like that. But as far as like, I mean, we have hail falling from the sky the size of baseballs, that's unheard of, and, I have all my friends and family and that are back home, they're like, there's hail coming down, like, so, it's a weird time. And, I mean,
the thunderstorms here are real.
Yeah.
Like we would occasionally get thunderstorms in California, maybe like once a year. And the lightning or the thunder is nothing like it is here. Here you have lightning and thunder. It shakes like the whole apartment.
Yeah.
Like I can understand why. Do you know Stevie Ray Vaughan, the guitarist?
Yeah.
You know that song, Texas Flood?
I do, yeah.
You can kind of like hear the Texas in that song. But it's just like kind of like that rumble and grumble. It's very fierce and violent here, the weather is. Compared to California, it tends to be pretty temperate. It gets about as hot as Texas in California, but the heat, at least where I lived in Bakersfield, California, it was dry heat. Here, it'll be 100 degrees and humid as fuck. So that's a whole different level of hot that I have never experienced before. I was like, oh yeah, people talked about how
We're
humid.
not even there yet. We're not even all the way there. You know, around,
Don't scare me.
Around mid-July, yeah, that's. I mean, in the weather, and let me just say, I mean, I think last year we had our record heat. I think it was like 112 or something ridiculous like that.
See, it gets about that hot in California, but not humid.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the last time that I took a flight, I think I flew from Las Vegas into Houston. And I remember I get off the plane and I just get hit with, I mean, it literally felt like a bath of liquid.
Insane.
I mean, it's crazy.
I had never experienced humidity like here. The first time we arrived here, we arrived in, I think it was late August, like the last week of August. And we had to, of course, move all the stuff into our apartment, and it was on the 3rd floor. And it was just basically me, my fiance, her dad, and her mother. And so it was basically me and her dad were going to do most of the lifting. But the humidity was so bad, we were like, we can't do this.
Oh, yeah.
We had to actually hire somebody to come and lift the
your
stuff 'cause we were
shirts
not
were getting
used to it.
soaked, you know. I mean,
I could probably do it
brutal.
now that I'm a little bit used to it. But then I was like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
I cannot
it's
do
brutal.
this right now.
Yeah.
It was insane. And I was like trying to think, like, looking back on that, is it because it was extremely brutal? Like, have I experienced the same amount of humidity and I'm just used to it now, or was it just especially brutal then?
Yeah, it was probably it's probably the same. You've probably just adapted a little bit. I mean, Texas is crazy, man. You never know what the weather's going to do. I mean, you know, like I said, the past 8 months have been insane, or past 10 months. How did you do during this most recent like storm?
We got our
tornado
power
thing?
knocked out. So our power was knocked out. I think the storm hit on a Thursday. I think it was like the 17th.
Yeah, Thursday, probably around 6:30. Yeah.
Yeah. So we didn't have power from then until I think the next Tuesday.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and of course it was starting to, at first it was like 70, 80 degrees, but then it very rapidly went to like 90 degrees.
Yeah.
And I was like, we can't stay here because we don't have any air conditioning. There's no way I'm going to be able to sleep. We're just sitting in the living room sweating. So we actually had to get an Airbnb.
Wow, where did y'all get an Airbnb at? Was it local?
It was local. Yeah.
Okay,
It was here in Houston. It was just on a side of town that actually had power. I'm trying to remember the exact area,
Man,
but I'm not familiar enough.
Luckily, I didn't lose power here at the studio. I was very. I mean, the power went out for about 7 minutes, and it came back on, and I was like, oh my God, like this is. I sat on my bed and turned the fan on right in my face, and I'm like, yes.
That's another thing that's kind of astonishing, though, because Texas doesn't seem to have really good infrastructure, and this is a major difference between Texas and California. But I can't tell if it's that the infrastructure is bad or just that the weather is not as bad in California, so it doesn't challenge the infrastructure as much.
What do you mean by that?
Well, every time there's a massive thunderstorm here, basically the power goes out. Oh. So I can't recall a time when the power went out in California, probably in the last 5 years, when it wasn't them doing it intentionally for something. Like they were intentionally repairing a power line.
That'll make you wonder, you know? That'll make you really wonder. Because I know up north in cities like, I don't even know, they run their power lines underground, you know? Like
up north in Texas, or are you talking about California?
No, up north in like the United States.
Oh, I see.
I'm trying to think.
That's a smart idea.
Yeah, I remember I talked to this girl, and she was from, I can't remember the name of the place that she was from, but it was a very cold location. And so they ran all of their power lines underground. They didn't have any power lines above ground.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you would think in a place like Texas
Exactly.
with as vicious weather as we have, that they would have thought long ago, like, okay, there's clearly a problem with the weather here. Let's try to make the infrastructure as sustainable as possible.
Right.
Can we find a solution to this? And it seems like they don't do it. And I'm not sure exactly kind of what the thinking there is.
That actually, you know.
Is it a money thing? Like, are we not paying enough taxes? And is that why it's cheaper to live here?
It can't be a money thing. You know, it can't be a money thing. But but maybe, you never know. I did see recently that Houston was like like several $100 million in debt for something. I don't know if that's correct, and I may just be bullshitting right now. I don't know.
I saw somewhere online where like what's his name, John Whitmore, that's our mayor now,
Yeah,
correct?
Whitmire,
he was like,
yeah.
well, Houston is broke.
Yeah, I think so.
Like, how are we broke?
Yeah, there's so many people here, and not just that. There's so many wealthy people here, and there's so many people that are making a lot of moves for the city. So it seems like there'd be an influx of money rather than being empty. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's politics is weird, man. I don't know if you're very political. I'm not. Because there's so many, there's not a defined line between, the right and the left and who's talking. When I see people up there talking, they're representing Democrat and Republican side, but you just look up there and you see two people almost, two, and I don't even want to say this because I have politicians coming on the show scheduled already, but almost like puppets, and not anybody specifically, but it's almost like, the people that are up there speaking, they're only spokespeople of decisions that are already made. And like I said, I'm not very political, and I'm going to be wrong most of the time when it comes to politics, but yeah, that's just an observation that I made. It's always so
phony.
Yeah.
And I think like whether you like Trump or not, whether you agree with his policies or not,
Right.
I think the appeal of Trump, rhetorically speaking, is just that he seemed, despite the fact that he was a billionaire, he seemed to be just kind of an average guy. And he's just a straight shooter.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And you didn't get the sense that he was putting on a persona. He just said whatever the fuck it is that he thought. And I think that appealed to a lot of people. And it seems like just a lot of politics is just phony.
Yeah, I would agree. This whole new presidential run now. I mean, there's people coming out of the woodworks to support Donald Trump and all of everything that he's done. I know my dad loved him. He hated Biden. Because Biden had been in politics for years. From my viewpoint, he has had no. He understands politics, but he has no understanding of business and how things go. How we were talking, you have to kind of start small and build something out of nothing. And I think that that's what Trump has going for him, is because he's independent. He's made these things out of nothing. And here he was, president of the United States for 4 years, and then it seems like shit hit the fan. I mean, because it just caused so much trouble. People didn't like the way he looked, or people didn't like the things he said. But in my opinion, I thought he was comical. I loved it.
I think he's funny. Yeah.
People that are, I remember I was going to Lamar University at the time, and I had this really.
Where's Lamar?
Lamar University is in Beaumont, Texas.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had this really amazing professor, and I believe her name was Dr. Davis. I'm not 100% sure on that, but she was so amazing. And she said that she had a friend when Donald Trump won president, that her friend called her crying and saying that she could never go to work again. And so, I mean, and just the reaction, like her.
How frank can I be on this podcast?
100%.
There's just a lot of pussies in the world. To be honest. If a presidential candidate is going to make you feel like you can't go on with your life anymore, there's going to be another one in 4 years. Just shut the fuck up and go to work.
100%. I mean, what do you expect? I mean, what's going to happen? I think she had told the story how she called upset. She said that she wasn't sending her kids to school anymore. I mean, there was a big ordeal, and there's people out there in the world like that in my eyes, no matter who wins presidency, it's not going to change my daily life at the moment. It's not going to change at an instant. Because there's just so many checks and balances and barriers that prevent any sudden change in politics. So.
Yeah, that's one of the benefits of the United States political system, right?
Yeah.
One person or one party, because of the checks and balances, can never have so much power that your life's not going to drastically change unless there's major hits to the economy, which we're somewhat experiencing now. And I think kind of like whatever your perspective is politically, I think it's quite clear that Joe Biden is just not fit for office. Right. I'm not even saying anything about his policies politically. He is just too old to be there. And I think most people recognize that.
He's ridiculed. He's clowned, you know. People make fun of him. You know? Have you seen Trump's posts? You know, that's so funny, dude. He's like making fun of Joe Biden being in like an old folks home, you know.
So funny.
But yeah, that's
it's not even a thing about somebody being old, because I've met people who are even older than Joe Biden, brilliant, smart, able to
aware,
conscious. So it's not even like an age thing. It's just he's just not fit, in my personal opinion. No matter who you put, even if it ends up being another Democratic, I would prefer that than somebody who's empty skulled, which is apparently what we have. So.
Yeah. So I will say this. You know, I was deep into the stock market for a while. You know, I was, you know, just for years, and I still am. You know, I still have the things that I have my eye on, but I've kind of focused my attention on, you know, other things besides the stock market. But it used to be, I would wake up, I would study these companies and study these stocks from morning to night, and I go to bed and do it again, you know, and but I will say, you know, I had a good chunk of money before Biden before Biden hopped in office. And I swear to you, I think I lost probably 60% of my portfolio. I mean, it had a 60% drop. So I mean, if you have 100,000, you're losing 60%. You have 40,000 left over. So if anybody's doing that, fuck you.
But
you know, it's that simple.
And I think for a lot of people, they may not invest in stocks, but I think a lot of people are like, "What the fuck? I can't afford groceries." Like, there's a lot of people there that are just kind of like on the edge. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like right on the line of poverty, and they're like, "We were able to afford groceries, and now we can't." It's through the roof.
Speaking of prices of groceries, I went to H-E-B earlier. Shout out H-E-B. I love H-E-B, by the way.
That is like the staple.
Honestly, yeah. Hey, what did you? I mean, do you shop at H-E-B?
I have shopped there once. I went there to get firewood and Kindle, and they had firewood.
Oh no! Where do you shop at?
Where do I shop at instead?
This is a big question.
Do I need to say like Whataburger, Kroger? I need to give a stereotype.
Honestly, I like Kroger. I like Kroger a lot.
Most groceries I get at either Whole Foods or Target.
Ooh, I like Whole Foods. Yeah, Target's a good one too. I love H-E-B because they have a lot of fresh meats and stuff. I know the local H-E-B right down in Washington. They have you could go in and get whatever cuts of meat that you want, or I mean it's very good.
I've been to Buc-ee's, by the way, just to let people know.
All right,
I'm not a completely fake Texan.
Did you get the beaver nuggets?
I did not get anything.
Oh damn!
Yeah, damn. I got gas there though. So.
You can't take the license plate off till you have the Buc-ee nuggets. But no, man. Yeah, Texas is an interesting state. When COVID hit, I was actually in Denver, Colorado.
Interesting.
And
you were there visiting or living there?
I was visiting. Okay. Yeah, I was there for the week, and I think the second day there, I was sitting in like a Chili's or something, and they tell me we're shutting down like in an hour, and it wasn't just them shutting down; it was the whole state. So my flights got canceled, everything got canceled. So I'm sitting there freaking out, trying to figure out how I'm going to get back to Texas. Well, at the time I was a student, and so Enterprise was doing a student discount. So I had to rent a car, drive it back home. I drove it all the way back to Texas. I was kind of freaked out just from being in there because, I mean, everybody was acting weird. Everybody in the state was acting weird. They sent out like a state of emergency. I mean, people were freaking out. And so I made it back to Texas, and Enterprise was awesome. They were amazing. I went to my house. They said, you know, this is no contact. We're taking all precautions. Park your car, put the keep it unlocked, put the key fob in the driver's seat, and we'll take the car. And so I got home at like 9 p.m. and they were picking it up at like 6 a.m. the next morning. I mean, it was crazy. But yeah, no contact. I mean, it was crazy.
It seemed like an apocalypse. It seemed first. It was crazy. I remember myself thinking that. My opinion changed over time. Apparently, the opinion of our political leaders did not change over time in response to the data that was being presented.
I did hear that California was a little funky during this.
It was severe. And one of the motivations for me actually leaving California is that we were still suffering the ramifications or consequences of shutting down the schools during the pandemic because enrollment was tanking. And the thing about me being a professor in California is that I was an adjunct professor at 2 different institutions. We have this saying in California, if you're an adjunct professor, you're a highway flyer, in the sense that you have to run from one institution to another in order to make enough money to live. So I was teaching at California State University of Bakersfield and also Bakersfield College, which is the local community college. And between those 2 colleges, I was able to make enough money to live before the pandemic. After that, where enrollment dropped significantly, I was sometimes only able to get like maybe 2-3 classes. It's like, I can't make a living doing this anymore. Yeah, it was pretty severe. The lockdowns were severe. The mask mandates were severe. And the vaccination requirement was also severe. Luckily, I was able to get out of that one.
You didn't get your vaccination?
I did not, no. I'm an unvaccinated individual.
We're shunning you. No, I'm kidding. No,
I was curious about that, given your medical background, what your perspective on it would be.
Yeah, so that actually is a great question. So I have a couple takes. You know, looking back now, I'm very skeptical of the vaccine. I got the vaccine and luckily I didn't see any problems from it, but I did see some things arise over time in communities, you know. So if I was to go back, I probably wouldn't get it. I know the day that I did get it, for like the next 24 hours, my mind felt foggy. You know, I was reading at the time and I was trying to read a book and I couldn't focus on the words. So I don't know if that was a direct correlation or if I was just being paranoid, you know, but either way, you know, it's very, very skeptical coming from a point of unknown, you know, because that's a time where everybody's really running around with their heads cut off, you know, and not understanding anything. And yes, like the mRNA technology wasn't invented yesterday. You know, it goes back years and years and years, and there's a lot of papers that support the advancements. But here's the thing, you know, they dish out a large, I said not large variety, but a large bulk of this vaccination to cover so many different people, and everybody in the world is different. Everybody has different genetic backgrounds and things like that. So
medical histories,
conditions. I think that the vaccine was generalized, and I think that yes, they probably had to do that. I mean, it probably saved some lives.
Had to do what? When you say they had to do that?
To
make it mandatory?
No, not make it mandatory, but roll out a vaccination.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. The mandatory thing, I think, is bullshit. You know, I think everybody should have their own choices, you know.
Well, that's a fundamental precept of the West, isn't it? Right? You, as an individual, should have control over your own body. The fact that somebody would force somebody to put a substance into your body seems to me atrocious.
Right, exactly. And so the reason that I got it is because, you know, I had family members that actually took a huge hit, which kind of sucks. But it was a legit problem. You know, the disease was a legit issue. You know, it was killing people. It was literally taking away their ability to breathe. So yes, I got it, understanding the fact that we may just be shooting in the dark, you know, because at the time that I got it, I wasn't sure what the future held.
Were you forced to take it in your industry?
No,
Okay.
no, nobody told me that I had to take it. I was going on a cruise one time, and you had to have it, but I had already had it at that time, and that actually brings up the story. When I went to get it, it was a very it was almost really controlled. So only people that had like signed up for it initially were getting the vaccine, and it was almost like a privilege to get it. Well, I was working at Lamar University at the time, and being a part of an institution, they kind of had first dibs. And so they sent me they said, if you want, it was completely voluntary. They sent me a link. You could sign up. They tell you where to be at a certain time and where they're rolling out these vaccines. Well, I got there and I'm in this room and we're in a line. Everybody's in a line, and they said, what do you do? They asked like your career, and you could either go A, into education, or B, other. And the education, we're getting vaccine A, and other was getting vaccine B.
What?
I know. And I called my dad after I left. I said, "Hey, I don't know why they were splitting people up, but they were. I mean, it almost felt like the Holocaust.
I was just about to say that. Yeah. I was just about to say that sounds like the Holocaust, but I didn't want to say it.
Yeah, no. I mean, it was interesting because, and of course me, I was like, I'm in education, I was working, at the university. I was like, yeah. So they gave me.
Don't worry, you're educated. They gave you the good sauce.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping.
They gave you the saline.
I didn't tell. Yeah, exactly. Hey, we'll take the saline. I didn't tell them that I was part-time. I was only putting about 10 hours a week in at the university.
They definitely would have gave you B.
I know, right? Yeah. Yes. Step over here.
Just this way, sir.
But yeah, no, it was.
This looks like a shower. It's not actually that.
Yeah, I know. So you hear the doors lock.
Yeah, actually, the university that I worked at, as well as the community college that I taught at, both required me to have the vaccine. The only exemption was a religious exemption.
Ah.
So I got a religious exemption. So I am not, don't come after me, California. I am a spiritual or religious individual.
Oh, beautiful. I love it.
I don't adhere to any particular sect. And so I had to write this letter explaining my religious beliefs. And I basically explained to them that because the vaccine was tested on fetal cells, I regarded that as a grievous mortal sin that could end me in hell if I injected that vaccine in my veins. And that proved to be sufficient that I did not have to take the vaccine.
Wow.
But honestly,
dude, I would love to read that. Actually,
I'll probably send it to you.
I bet it's beautifully written.
I honestly, at a certain point, I was thinking to myself, I was like, because I am very about bodily autonomy.
Yeah.
And I'm very interested in eating very well, and I have a holistic perspective when it comes to health. And so, to be honest, there was no way that I was going to put that in my body.
Yeah.
Not because at that particular stage I even knew it was harmful, just because I knew that it was a somewhat new technology. And so I had to think to myself, I was like, well, I could take this vaccine, and the risk that something bad happens to me might be low. But what happens if something bad does happen? You can't sue the pharmaceutical company,
right?
Because of the emergency use authorization.
Which is crazy.
I don't have health insurance because I'm a part-time adjunct instructor. So if I should receive a vaccine injury, I am fucked, because now I can't work, especially if it's a particularly bad, if I had a stroke or something like that, it was particularly bad, then I can't work, and there's no way for me to receive any sort of compensation. So there were a couple reasons why I just did not want to get it. And so I was just like, well, I'm going to try the religious exemption. If it doesn't work, then I'm probably going to have to find another line of work. And I was really at that point. I was willing to stand on that line. You know?
I think that that's a good perspective. You know, that's a good perspective to have, because, you know, in a lot of people relate taking the vaccine to just being like, you know, like almost like sheep, like following into the herd. But you know, I think that not taking the vaccine was great, but also there was that side that the people that were harmed from the whole outbreak that could have been saved from the vaccine, you know.
But there's no evidence that the vaccine actually prevented transmission.
Yeah, I don't think that it would prevent transmission, and that's
then how would you not taking the vaccine harm somebody else if it didn't prevent transmission?
How would you have not taken the vaccine to harm? Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. So that's what the argument was against it, right?
Yeah, well, if the vaccine doesn't actually prevent the transmission of COVID-19, and your argument is that people should take the vaccine in order to prevent transmission, well, if it doesn't actually do that, then what is the justification for taking it? Particularly if you're somebody who is not at risk, you know?
Right.
I'm a 34-year-old, relatively healthy man. Why should I have to take the vaccine? It seems to me more like I should just get COVID. And to be honest, I'm not sure I even got COVID.
Right.
I think I did, but I'm not even sure. So if I did get it, it wasn't severe enough to actually be mortally harmful to me.
Right.
Why should I get it and risk harming my health if the vaccine doesn't even have the risk of harming somebody else?
Right.
Or prevent me from harming somebody else.
I will say this. I got the vaccine, and probably maybe a month later, I'm pretty sure that I got COVID.
That's what I'm saying.
It. Yeah, so here's what happened. I lost all sense of taste. I lost all sense of smell. I had a full taste. And the only reason I knew this is because I had a bottle of, like, I don't know, some like Dior cologne or something. I don't know. You know, something strong that has a pretty heavy fragrance.
Thick, yeah.
I could spray it right up my nostril, and it was like mists of water.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was, you know, and I was like, man, maybe I saved myself by getting the vaccine. I don't know, but you know, and
well, I don't understand though. So you seem to be saying that you got COVID after you got the vaccine.
Yes.
Well, then how did it save you from COVID?
Because the vaccine wouldn't prevent transmission or spread of disease, but it would prevent the way that your body reacts to the submersion of the virus in your body.
But you said that you had the symptoms, didn't you? If you weren't able to smell, doesn't that mean in turn that it actually affected you the way that it normally would? COVID?
Not necessarily, because COVID was an attack on your respiratory system. So your respiratory system, your lungs would start filling up and almost like having like pneumonia-like symptoms and coughing and things like that. So I was able to bypass all of the symptoms,
major symptoms
I see. Of COVID. And I mean, I didn't feel bad. Nothing out of the ordinary happened to me. It's just when I was going out, I went, and I was like, what?
Water?
I mean, it literally, it smelled like water. And I was like, wow, my brain is fucked. Like, I'm done, you know?
Did you contract COVID? Because I know some people, they had COVID, they got the vaccine, and then they got COVID or long COVID. That happened with my mother. Did you have COVID before you got the vaccine? Okay. No. So you got the vaccine and then you got COVID.
Got vaccine, and that could be another speculation. It just depends on perspective, you know, because I can only speak on my experience, but you know, who's to say that didn't happen because of the shot, you know, and I'm not gonna say, you know, I've studied science. I have a couple science degrees, but I'm not gonna sit here and act like I know what happened because there's so much unknown, you know.
I have no science degrees, and I'm not sure exactly what happened. I just listen to what people say.
It's good to be skeptical,
right,
for anything, you know, right. and that's no joke. So yeah, you always have to be skeptical, and you know, I know that, in California, they were shutting down businesses. And over here in Texas, it was almost like party central. I mean, in the midst of COVID, I remember going to a concert, like a full concert, everybody like no mask. Everybody's just like yelling and screaming and getting real close to each other.
But the rules that they had in place were absurd. They were meaningless.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've been paying attention at all to Fauci, who's currently before Congress, and he's basically said that a lot of these rules that they had in place, like, for example, the 6 feet of social distance, had no scientific basis. So that was one thing. You had the 6 feet at the grocery store, and then they were doing like these crazy, absurd things in California where I remember we went out to eat one night at one of our favorite restaurants, the Yard House, and it's like you couldn't eat inside the restaurant, but they had
ridiculous
an inside area outside the restaurant, and you could eat in that area, which didn't seem to have much more ventilation than the inside area.
Yeah, I mean,
but that was just classified as outside. I'm like, this does not make fucking sense. This does not make sense. And then they were doing the whole vaccine passport thing. Like, what is that, dude?
Yeah.
What do you mean? That's not a FERPA violation? Now I have to show you my medical records in order to actually go into your restaurant? What is this? That doesn't make sense to me. I was all in favor, use the technology that we have, and the people who are most susceptible to disease, they should likely get the vaccine. They should take the risk, right? Because the reality is you're going to have to weigh the risk. Taking the vaccine, potentially getting COVID, maybe for some people's medical history, it's probably more advantageous that they take the vaccine. But the idea that you're going to force everybody to take the vaccine seems to me atrocious. And you're going to restrict people's rights and liberties in order to try to prevent people from contracting COVID was very strange. It's totalitarian.
Strange, yeah.
It was totalitarian. That's another reason why I was like, if shit like this kicks off again, California is going to go back into that despotic hell that it was.
Right,
and I don't think that that's actually going to happen here in Texas. And it seems like Governor Abbott has tried to make steps to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Man, life is weird, man. Like there's so many components to this thing that we call life. I
think it's going to be so long before we actually unwind what really even happened there and all the harms and potential benefits of it. It's going to take a long time to unwind that whole thing.
Yeah, and we may never know. It may just be one of those things that gets kind of shoved into the closet, like many other things. I mean,
a great many other things. Yeah.
You think we went to the moon?
I have to be honest, I haven't assessed the evidence. My instinct is to say yes, but I know that people are skeptical of that idea. I have not really assessed the evidence, so I can't say one way or the other.
I have a friend, and he sends me things all the time, and it's literally nothing but NASA with a green screen in the back, and there's people like acting like they're floating. But who knows? I'm like you. My initial thought would be yes, but I don't know.
We should go to the space station and ask them.
Yeah,
since we live in Space City.
Right down the road. Well, what about my mind actually just went blank.
What about martial arts? We haven't talked about martial arts.
Yeah, let's get into that. Where the hell did you fall into this?
Yeah, so I would say that I've always wanted to study martial arts, but I started training, I think it would have been 2017. So I think, what is that? 7 years. So I've been training martial arts for about 7 years.
7 years? You could do a lot in 7 years.
You can do a lot. That's true. Initially, I just went in with the desire to...
Where do you train at?
Currently, I train at Gracie Barra on Fondren, which is slightly off Westheimer. But I've bounced around to a lot of different gyms.
You like it over there?
Here in Houston. I like it because it's close. So it's actually like 5 minutes away from my apartment.
Is that on the second story?
My apartment?
No, the Gracie Barra?
No, it's first floor. They don't have a second.
I think I went to the second location. I think I tried out their second location.
Oh, do you train?
Yeah. Well, no, I'm not going to sit here and say that I train. I've trained off and on, probably within the past 4 or 5 years. I actually had a knee injury that had nothing. it wasn't even related to any like crazy physical activity. I was bouncing my nieces on the trampoline, and my knee just snaps. I mean, it hadn't been the same since. So I kind of had to lay off. But
what were you training in particular? Jiu-jitsu?
Jiu-jitsu, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so my friend Trent, his family, they own a place called TPC. It's Texas Punishment Crew out of Beaumont, Texas.
That sounds vicious.
And they're very technical. They're very technical.
Is that a jiu-jitsu school?
Mm-hmm.
TPC. Okay.
Yeah, they do jiu-jitsu, they do boxing, they do MMA and things like that. But mainly Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It's a Gracie descendant gym.
Gotcha.
They were trained by the two guys that own it. I hope I'm not butchering this completely, but they were trained by Renzo Gracie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I believe so. But yeah, very, very, very good gym. I trained there for probably it's not even anything to brag about, but probably about 8 months, 7-8 months, and I'm still a white belt, in jiu-jitsu. But I love it. I think the idea of body maneuvering and positioning is so crucial, and once you get in there and do it, it's like nothing else, because you'll have somebody that's maybe half of your size and half of your strength, but you'll get strangled real quick.
Oh yeah.
So there's a lot of technique that goes into that. So yeah, and like I said, I'm curious to find out how you got into the game there.
Well, I'll say in response to that, jiu-jitsu is the most difficult thing I have ever tried in my life, and I have the inclination to try very difficult things. I partly got my bachelor's degree in philosophy because it was difficult.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
The art that I love most, as far as literature is concerned, is poetry and martial arts in particular. The reason why I got interested in it was initially just because I had the desire to be able to defend myself and also to protect people, in particular, the woman that's in my life.
Sure.
And so when I went in with no understanding of martial arts, I was just like, can I take kickboxing or something? And this was at a gym called Eric Nolan's in Bakersfield. And so they didn't have kickboxing per se, but they did have Muay Thai. And Muay Thai, as taught there, is kind of more generalized striking. They have a fantastic gym in Eric Nolan's. The instructors there are some of my friends. Ryan, I'm trying to remember. It's been a year. So
yeah.
My friend Ryan, damn, his last name slipped in mind. Anyway,
tip of the tongue phenomenon.
They have fantastic instructors who are very well versed in striking. So I did that Muay Thai generalized striking for probably about 3 or 4 years, and then I transitioned.
Which is very complex.
It is
very complex.
It's a beautiful but brutal art.
Yeah.
And then I transitioned to training MMA for the last basically 1.5, 2 years before I actually ended up moving here to Houston. But originally it started with a simple desire to know how to protect myself and others, but I fell in love with it. I love martial arts so much. There's just like I don't know. I like being physically active, but I found for me personally, when I just do training for the sake of training, like a lot of people really enjoy weightlifting. And it's just like after a certain time, that just becomes so boring. It's like, oh, great. Now we're doing arms day. We're doing curls.
Yeah,
we're doing
agree.
triceps.
Yeah.
And it's like, martial arts is beautiful because it mixes not only, of course, that physicality where you have to, of course, exert yourself physically, but also there is an intellectual element that's at play because, of course, you have to learn how to do the techniques properly. And then when you get to a certain stage, of course, in your martial arts journey and you start actively sparring, it's the greatest thing in the world. I don't know how as a grown man somebody could not want to fight. Yeah. And it's a good mix of being physical, where you have to exert yourself to your utmost potential, but also, and a lot of people overlook this who don't understand anything about martial arts, it's a very intellectual game because you are trying to feint, you're trying to basically goad somebody into behaving or reacting the way that you want them to react and then taking advantage of that. So generally speaking, all things being equal in a fight, the person who is the most intelligent is the person who is going to win. Of course, there's all different kinds of elements at play, somebody's strength, their endurance, those kinds of things. But all things being equal, the person who's most intelligent will win. It's a very intellectual game, and a lot of people don't think about that.
That makes me want to go to the gym right now. Oh my God.
I'm also not very well versed in jiu-jitsu. So I did a lot of no-gi jiu-jitsu when I was training MMA, but I'm still a white belt. So there's a lot for me to learn. But I've noticed with the gyms here in Houston, it seems like the gyms, they have like Muay Thai and jiu-jitsu, but most of them don't seem to have a really good MMA program, which is what I wanted to transition to when I moved here. And I've yet to find a gym that has a good mix of all those things. So as of now, I've just basically been training Muay Thai. And for the last probably like 7 to 8 months before I signed up at Gracie Barra, I was just basically jumping around from gym to gym and just going on their sparring days and just sparring.
That's fun though.
It is. I love sparring. But I started to lose. I could tell I was losing a little bit of my technique because I was just basically going in there and, trying to get in a fight more or less.
Man, I love combat sports. I
love it so much.
I do too.
I just don't know. To be honest, I just can't understand how somebody wants to watch any other sport.
Yeah.
Once you've seen a fist fight and 4-ounce gloves, how are you going to go watch somebody kick a fucking ball, dude?
Yeah.
Oh, you put a ball in a net?
Nice.
Cool. Yeah. Great. I just watched some dude fucking ricochet his shin off some dude's temple.
Yeah.
Now he's unconscious, jerking in the corner. What are we talking about? You're going to go watch some dude kick a ball in a net? Get the fuck out of here.
So did you watch this fight last weekend?
Yep.
Oh,
I watch it religiously.
Dude,
I don't miss a fight.
Dustin Poirier is a monster, man.
Dude, I wanted Dustin Poirier.
I know. I was so sad. But he's a warrior. He won everybody's respect right there. I mean, that just goes to show you what a talented artist he is, I mean, he was up against a monster, with I don't know how to say his last name, Islam Makhachev.
Yeah.
That guy's scary. I mean, he's so scary. I mean, he may be one of the most dangerous people on the planet. And Dustin Poirier went in there and made it to the very, very last round. I mean,
to be honest, I thought if he made it like the next 2.5 minutes, I thought maybe he had a chance on the judges' scorecards.
Well, yeah, with those judges.
But God, I hate those fucking Dagestanis, dude. Yeah. They're so good. Yeah, I have to admit that first and foremost. They're so skilled. Khabib, Islam Makhachev, anybody that trains in that whole camp, they're just so skilled and so good. But their fighting style, I just don't like it. I like a good old-fashioned brawl. Yeah. I have to say, I'm a bit biased with MMA fights. I watch MMA knowing that wrestling and jiu-jitsu are involved, and I don't mind a little bit of that. But what I really want to see is
just some brutal
kickboxing,
striking. Yeah.
kickboxing and 4-ounce gloves. That's what I want to see. So I just don't really like their style, but I can't deny the skill.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, Dustin Poirier is no joke, man. His striking is very good. I mean, he
probably is one of the best pure boxers in the UFC. Yeah, I would say he makes the top 5 best pure boxers in the UFC. I would say that the best pure boxer currently is Ilia Topuria. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. I was actually going to say, oh my God, now his name is slipping my mind. Guy from Hawaii.
Max Holloway.
Holloway
is a tremendous. Yeah, he makes the top 5 as well.
He's up there.
I just love his attitude. Yeah. He just has such a tremendous attitude.
Yeah, and he's in there. I mean,
I don't know how somebody could not like Max Holloway.
Honestly, yeah, and he has that mindset though. Like he's going to win, and it's he also plays video games. Yeah, I don't know if you play video games, but I have a lot of friends that play Call of Duty and things like that.
I play Call of Duty. Yeah.
Really?
Not
you play
competitively.
Warzone?
I can't get into Warzone. It's too the maps are too large, and I don't like the zoom out of the camera, so I like kind of like the more first person thing.
I've been hopping in Warzone lately, but I have a lot of friends that are very competitive. I mean, they're very competitive, and I mean, there's a lot of skill that goes into. People say, "Oh, it's video games," but I mean, you have to be really, just like anything else. Just like Muay Thai or Jiu-Jitsu, you have to be very well-rounded in your knowledge to prevail, to win. And but yeah, it's a very interesting sport as far as video games go. But yeah, no, I'll hop in Warzone and we'll hop in Plunder, or we've been playing a lot of Resurgence lately. And so
You play with like a group of friends?
Yeah, we have a little group going, yeah.
I used to be in a clique when I was in high school.
Okay.
I don't know if you ever did that. We used to play Halo 3, and we had this clique called ATR. It's like you would put ATR and then the rest of whatever your gamer tag is.
Yeah.
I can't even remember off the top of my head what mine was. ATR something. Anyway, but when we played Halo 3 at that time, there was just so much shit talking in the lobbies.
Yes.
And now it seems like it's relatively like quiet, and people are like afraid to like offend other people.
I think everybody's in their own little parties though, like, because when I go into game chat, I mean, there's some brutal stuff being said. I mean, we're saying some brutal stuff, but there I think my gamer tag back in the day was iSpeed 257, because I like the idea of like the small lowercase I and then like a name, and then 257 was the top speed of the Koenigsegg, the very fastest car at the time. And I was like, yeah, 257. So that was like my number all through high school. And but yeah, no, we're just Spacejumper these days.
Is that really your gamer tag?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
that's cool,
yeah.
cool.
Spacejumper 317.
Have you thought about doing like streaming online?
Yeah, I'm not that good.
Yet.
Yeah. No, I'm not that good. It would be fun, but it wouldn't be anything that I would pursue. Because here's my problem: I'll get into a game, and I'll play the game, and the game will be very fun. But then I'll look up, and 5 hours have passed, or 6 hours have passed, and I'm like, oh my god, where is my day gone? It's almost like a waste of time,
Oh yeah.
Unless you're making money, then it can't be a waste of time, So yeah, it's kind of one of those things you kind of got to weigh and see what it is that you really want to do. And if I really wanted to play video games, I would probably start a stream, because there's a lot of interest in these games. I know my friend, I have a cousin who plays a lot of this game. I forgot the name again. But it's this car, and they're on the soccer field, and they're jumping and bouncing this soccer ball in between, a group of two, and you're versing a team.
Didn't they have a map like that in Call of Duty?
Maybe at one point, but it's called Rocket League. This game is called Rocket League, and it's very competitive. I mean, a lot of these games are just competitive, and it's ridiculous, honestly. But yeah, there's a lot going on out there, man, and you never know what is going to you never know what is involved, and because everything is so complex. There's a lot of layers to everything. But yeah, man, it's an interesting time to be alive,
to say the least. I was just thinking about how you said how video games can be addictive, and I remember I got to a point where I was playing Halo 3. This was just after I graduated high school, in between high school and community college, and I was playing like Halo like 8-9 hours a day. It's kind of that weird period where you didn't have a job, and you're not necessarily, I mean, you're an adult technically, but nobody really has any expectations that you're going to have a job, or at least my parents did. So I basically lived off Halo 3, Miller High Life, and Little Caesars $5 pizzas.
Ooh, that's living the life, man. Every time I got a Little Caesars $5 pizza, I don't know why, but I had to have a Pepsi. I had to, and man, that's what did me wrong. I grew up in this small town, and it was just the norm to just eating bad things and to be very malnutritious. But you were telling me, I guess we could jump to this. You were telling me that you're very particular about your diet and your eating habits. What are they like?
So I would say that I eat kind of a modified paleo diet.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
So generally with paleo diet, I think that they don't allow for dairy, if I understand correctly. So I do eat dairy, but only raw dairy exclusively.
What do you mean by raw dairy?
I mean, it is not pasteurized. Straight from the udder.
Ah.
Yes. So actually,
Old juicy goose.
interestingly enough, here in Texas, it's very different from California in that, according to the laws, you can actually purchase raw milk in store. So I could just go to a Sprouts in California and actually buy a gallon of raw milk. However, here in Texas, they're not allowed to sell retail. So I actually have to go to a co-op and buy direct from a farmer to get raw milk, which is a little bit weird because, of course, again, this is one of those differences. You kind of generally conceive of Texas as being a little bit more liberal, not politically, but I just mean more free.
Right.
So you would think like, oh yeah, surely I can go to the store and pick up a gallon of raw
How many
milk.
gallons are you picking up at a time?
Just once a week.
Just once a
Yeah, and I usually don't even finish it, to be honest with you. But yeah,
Is it different? Is it good?
it is fucking delicious.
Really?
It'll fuck up your life. The problem is that it's quite expensive.
Can you give me this contact?
I can. Yes.
Dude.
You're saying this like we're being watched by the FBI.
We're gonna, you can't give it to me. We're gonna turn off all cameras before I know the.
I got the plug. I got the raw milk plug.
The plug on this raw milk. Man, I'm in, dude. I'm gonna be dealing some raw milk before too long.
But I would say that that's the only real difference I have between a paleo diet.
Wow.
Otherwise, it's basically grass-fed meat, organic fruits and vegetables, and then I'm pretty strict about my supplement regime.
Oh, what do you mean? What is your supplement regime?
So I actually take supplements from a company called Youngevity, which is, in my personal opinion at least, as somebody who's tried a lot of supplements, kind of like the premier supplement company in the United States. And their philosophy is just that the human body requires 90 essential nutrients, and they have to be present in a bioavailable form such that your body can absorb it. And so they've crafted these supplements with these 90 essential nutrients. And so I take those twice a day. Basically.
Wow.
I can give you the plug for that one.
Yeah, I may need it. I love supplements. I have a list of things that I take throughout the day. I haven't been taking them religiously, unfortunately, but I have my my supplements set out for morning, basically breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and it's a handful of different supplements for each one. But yeah, no, I and it's funny how I did that because ChatGPT these days is so advanced. So I literally typed in everything that I had and I said, give me a timeline from when I should take each one of these, and it like categorized them in like a morning, midday and evening type thing. So, but yeah, that's what I do, and it's good. I mean, I think that what you put in your body is very crucial, because it's kind of like the building blocks of everything that you see, and
Precisely.
And if you're not feeding these cells and feeding your body with this with good stuff, then you're just doing yourself a disservice.
I want to ask you about this too, because again, you do cancer research. Yeah. So what do you think the connection is between nutrition and cancer? Because there are some people who think that there's literally no connection between what someone eats, what they supplement with, the exercise, and cancer.
Yeah, and I would like to remove my opinion and remove my reply from any connection to any organization that I'm in. But absolutely.
Do you want to skip to the next question?
No, okay, absolutely. Okay. What you take in your body is definitely very important. I would reduce sugar intake, and fasting apparently is almost like a bodily reset in a way where your body completely resets and your cells start rejuvenating and when you're fasting, you're pulling energy out of certain energy storages, and those energy storages have to be replenished. I mean, that's almost like having a pantry full of items, but if you keep your pantry full of items for longer than the expiration date, there's just going to be bad items in your pantry, So that's why I think fasting is good, and it's kind of like utilizing the resources in your pantry so you could get fresh resources in, and I think, cancer is a bitch. Fuck cancer. Let me just say that, because it's taken out so many people, and it's just an uncontrolled, it's an uncontrolled biological mishap, you know, and it's
You say uncontrollable. What do you mean by that? Because if you are suggesting that by fasting you could actually do something to help with the incidence of cancer, that seems to suggest that it's not entirely uncontrollable.
Uncontrollable in the fact that the general knowledge and a set of protocols and guidelines to follow in order to fix a certain situation is unprecedented. You know, there's yes, it can be controllable, but we don't know for sure. You know, it's speculation and it's tested, but it is speculation. I would say yes, fasting is amazing. And if there was a secret sauce to cancer prevention, I would say that fasting would be it. And also the intake that you're taking in your body, I would reduce all sugars, minimizing carbs, and I think that a paleo-like lifestyle is optimal. You know, meats, veggies, that's it. You know, and yeah, it possibly is preventable, but there isn't a set of protocols to go by to prevent it. You know, because you know people get cancer all the time. You know, and it's terrible. It people pass away from cancer. And I've had family members that pass away from cancer. And if there was a secret sauce, but, you know, who's going to be like, oh, you need to fast, you know, and maybe we need to do more studies on that. Maybe we need to do more research on how to prevent these things. But yeah, no, I appreciate the question. And honestly, I'm just as clueless as the rest of the world, but I could definitely give my 2 cents. And when I think of cancer prevention, I think about fasting.
Do you think that there are potentially alternative therapies and modes of thinking as it concerns cancer that are not being studied because there is such a financial benefit to the currently accepted conventional practices with cancer?
Oh,
like a radiation and chemotherapy?
Yeah. Here's the problem with that I have with radiation and chemotherapy is they're both toxic. You know, they're both very toxic. I had a facial surgery on my face. You could kind of see the scar on my face.
I thought you were just a bad motherfucker.
I know.
Took some punches.
So I actually, there was something on my nose and it was a bump and I thought that it was cancer. And I was like, oh my God. Like I went through all the steps to deal with all of it. And they were like, you know, we may have to shoot it with radiation. And
frightening.
They were like, if we have to do that, your mouth will never produce saliva the same way. You're going to have to use a prescription toothpaste for the rest of your life. You're going to have to use a prescription mouthwash every hour that you live. Like literally, I mean,
whoa.
It was a list of problem after problem after problem. And same with chemotherapy. I've done tests with chemotherapy, and you know, although yes, we test it because we're trying to advance and trying to become better and things like that. But chemo is very toxic. You know, it's very, very damaging to the body, and it's not selective. You know, it's chemotherapy isn't like, oh, here's some cancer cells, like let's kill them. It's like, no. It's like sending a tribe of warriors that are just killers into a community, and it's not just killing the bad cells, but it's, you know, killing all the good cells too. Yeah. So yeah, you got to watch out. I don't know if there's a better route. I would hope that there is, and I hope that we're on the path to finding that. But at the moment, I know that there's a lot of smart people working towards the goal to prevent any further damage to families and things like that. I mean, I see people working endlessly. I mean, morning to night, doing research, working numbers, running genetic tests, and studying the genetic code on specific cells. And I mean, it's very complex, and it's a very good and deep topic to go in, because I mean it's never ending, and cancer is just one word, but there's a lot of types of cancer. There's there's leukemia, there's lung cancer, breast cancer. I mean, there's of course metastatic cancer that's spread everywhere in your body, different stages, and it's very complicated. There's a lot of complex molecular components that are involved in the development of cells that won't ever stop proliferating, and it's a complex topic. So for me to sit here and say one way or another would be inaccurate, but I do know that there's a lot of smart people there, and if there was a whistle to blow, I feel like people would be blowing it, because there, like I said, imagine the person that said, "Oh, hey, I have a cure to cancer." It would be legendary,
Are you sure?
I mean, it would have to be. Imagine.
How much money do you think is made off cancer so-called medicines annually, and the doctors who prescribe them?
Definitely.
If you don't want to answer any of these questions,
no,
we can move on to the next thing.
I want to answer these questions. You got me wind up, baby.
Okay.
This
Speaking of which,
this was the problem. Yeah. Hey, we could go in. Yeah.
I'm on the Spacejumper podcast.
Yeah, we are on the space. Hey, shout out to you, by the way, for shout out to Stephanie for hooking us up. Yeah.
Do you want some more?
Honestly, I actually will. Thank you so much.
I like you to say honestly.
Shout out Stephanie.
This was fire, dude. This was really good wine.
Freak show. Like I said, $14, baby.
That's how much this. I think this one. Well, it's currently on sale. I think it was like $13.
All right. Thank you so much. Yeah, we'll have to be very strategic in our sips.
Speak for yourself. I'm about to down this. No, I'm just kidding. No, I guess what I'm suggesting is that it seems to me like medicine is a bit like politics.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities.
There's so much money involved sometimes in some of these industries. It's like I wonder to what extent the money involved is preventing actual work from being done. Have you ever studied like alternative therapies for cancer? Have you ever looked, for example, at like the Gerson therapy?
No, what is that?
The Gerson therapy. So there was this German doctor by the name of Max Gerson in the early, I might be getting this wrong, it's been a while since I studied his work, but I think it was the early 1930s, 1940s. And he was somebody who, as a medical student, actually suffered severe migraines. And he was trying to find a cure to his migraines. And he actually found that when he didn't eat particular kinds of food, usually those that had a high amount of sugar in them, processed sugar, not natural sugar, processed sugar, he would actually develop these migraines, which of course are probably just a consequence of inflammation, in this case in particular in the brain. So he found that when he ate a particular kind of diet, for him it was a vegetarian diet, usually with apples and fresh pressed apple juice, that he actually didn't suffer from migraines. Well, eventually what happened with him is he went on to become a doctor, and he noticed that the way that they were conventionally studying cancer or treating cancer was not effective for the most part. And so he developed this whole therapy called the Gerson therapy, which was basically a natural nutritional approach to treating cancer. And it involved using organic, fresh-pressed juices primarily and eating an entirely vegetarian or vegan diet, and also included supplementation and coffee enemas.
Coffee enemas?
Coffee enemas.
Wow.
Which are quite bizarre, but...
Have you tried it?
Are the feds watching? I have tried coffee enemas.
Really?
I actually used to do them regularly. I haven't done them in quite a while. But the idea...
What's the process on that?
So, from my understanding with coffee enemas, the idea is that you inject caffeine, or you inject coffee rather, of course, into your colon. And basically through your colon, it's able to access your liver. And the caffeine actually causes the blood vessels in your liver to dilate. And it causes the bile that's built up in your liver, this I haven't studied this in a while, so I might got some of the details wrong.
You're not pulling my leg, huh? Because I'm gonna be I'm gonna be in my bathroom. I'm gonna.
Yeah, and I might have some of the details wrong. It's been a while since I've studied this. So of course,
honestly, I've never heard of this.
If you look into it.
I think that I'm. It's definitely a new thing. Yeah.
But the idea with the coffee enemas is it's supposed to increase the detoxification of your liver in a very quick process. And his idea was basically by eating an organic diet that's primarily vegan or vegetarian and constantly taking into your body fresh pressed juices, you're allowing your body to get all the nutrients it requires, which speeds up the detoxification process. And if you do that, if you juice a lot, what will happen is that those toxins will build up in your liver. Because if you give your body fresh pressed juices with all of the enzymes, it very quickly starts to release the toxins that are built up in your cells because, of course, the environment is so insanely toxic. And so you need a method of detoxification that is very rapid. And so he came up with this idea of coffee enemas. And so people would inject coffee enemas.
Do you get like jacked up on caffeine?
Yeah, you do. I haven't done this in a very long time.
Okay.
Early 20. It's been...
Well,
yeah,
very cool.
early 20s.
I'm interested in it because I think that there's a lot of things that are beneficial that aren't really spoken about.
See, this is what I'm saying. Like you've never even heard of that,
Yeah.
and I'm not even saying that necessarily works. I don't know, but my question would be, well, why hasn't that been studied? If there's somebody who is suggesting that potentially could be beneficial for cancer, let's say it's not even a cure. Let's just say that in 50% of cases it actually helps patients. Well, why aren't we exploring that? And so my mind goes to a place of conspiracy. I'm thinking, well, usually if you want to understand something in a capitalist society, what do? Just follow the fucking money, baby.
Yeah, hey.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the money in this case would suggest that there is more profit to be earned from radiation and chemotherapy and the selling thereof than actually these natural treatments. Because, of course, what doctor do you need to prescribe you a fresh press apple, spinach, and celery juice, and purchasing coffee and doing a coffee enema? There's no money to be made from that. So it seems like most of these conventional practices usually have their basis in what is profitable, who could earn money from them. And again, this is me with no expertise. I'm just
right. Yeah. No. I think exploring external possibilities is very crucial. And I don't know if these large cancer facilities are doing that, and I think I think that it may be pharmaceutically inclined, because, you have these pharmaceutical companies that are paying institutions to proceed with studies that they want done. And there may be a money motive behind it, and I guess like you said, follow the money, and there's a lot of money thrown away to causes that don't make any difference, but there's also a lot of money thrown to causes that do make a difference. So yeah, I guess I agree with you. Follow the money, but I guess it's easier said than done, because it's very complex and there's a lot of stuff involved in it. There's a lot of components. There's a lot of people making profits in their little niches, So I don't know, and it would be upsetting to work your whole life in a certain certain preventative care to know that the whole system is corrupt, and that may be the case, and in multiple specialties, but yeah, I agree with you. I think that not only do we need to be working with drug companies, but also working with other ideas that could possibly prevent this thing that we are being attacked by,
Yeah.
The human body is complex. So why not do anything that you can to prevent these malfunctions?
Yeah, and it might be the case that there's probably some sort of like I'm gonna put you down.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to reject you. You know I love you. Yeah, it might be the case that what's best for most people is some sort of hybrid approach between nutrition and conventional medicine. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've just studied kind of some of these more holistic approaches to medicine, and I think that they have some interesting insights, and I'd be interested to see what it looks like when they actually apply the scientific method to some of these methods.
Hey, I agree. And here's the one heartbreaking thing I will say, because I'm in and out of the hospitals and things like that. So I get to see, they're serving shit for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Jello.
They have vending machines filled with more shit.
They need wine.
They do need wine.
To be honest, though, there are some health benefits to red wine, which is primarily why I drink it. It is very potent. It's very filled with resveratrol. It's a very active antioxidant. I was just joking. Maybe not wine, but good healthy.
No. But there is resveratrol in wine. I think it's maybe in your wine, maybe not my wine, but
not as much.
But I think it's a Pinot Noir, if I'm not mistaken. I could be. Let me just ask good old ChatGPT here.
Where you at, Jamie?
Yeah. Let's see. Which wine is most concentrated with resveratrol? All right, let's take a look.
Cabernet, let's go.
He gave me this big thing to say, Pinot Noir and Cabernet Sauvignon.
Look at here we are.
I know.
Solving the problem right now.
I know. 2 bottles in, baby. I think yours may have been a little bit more than 455 milliliters or 750.
Yeah, I think that one, usually I get like 4 glasses out of that one.
Nice. Yeah. Okay, well, I knew I should have got another bottle. But yeah, man, you're an interesting character, and you've made a lot of progress over a 6-year span of when you started in English and progressing in mixed martial arts and kind of getting a better understanding of bodily movement and positioning, and your whole interest in men's fashion and menswear and clothing has been, honestly, I think a game changer. We're in 2024. We need more people like you, because I feel like we can't let the world get too boring. Because that would just be a shame. We would be falling to the knee by not releasing creativity. Yeah. And I feel like you've attacked that well.
I think people are very inclined to stereotype people, right? You might take that somebody who is interested in martial arts would not at one and the same time be interested in poetry. So there's a lot of stereotypes that I think sometimes people can fall prey to. Like, you think that just because you're interested in more masculine or manly things like martial arts, you can't at one and the same time be interested in poetry or fashion and style. And I think part of my social media journey has been, at least in part, trying to show that, these things are not independent of each other. You can work in multiple different fields and be interested in different things, even though style and fashion is the main interest.
Well, I like the fact that you're doing that. I think, like I said, I think more people need to be like that, and I love when people cross the line in between MMA and something as in poetry or clothing, because it really just, the stereotypes don't really matter. It really just kind of shows your love for art and ambition in as far as becoming the best person you could be, because everything that you're involved in, you won't find anybody that's not educated in that field. Because one thing, English, you got to be smart. MMA, you got to be smart. Poetry, you got to be smart. I mean, so these are you're kind of honing in on a group of colleagues in this world of life, that kind of restricts. It's almost like this sieve. It's almost like this restriction from things they, dumb can't pass through. And I'm so sorry for saying that for the dumb people, but
none of your beautiful viewers.
None
are
of the
dumb.
viewers. Yeah.
Not a single one.
These are people that the viewers know, but yeah, no, seriously. Everything that you're involved in, you have to be smart to be involved in one of them versus multiple. And I love when people are diverse like that. And I think that Houston's really gaining an extra point with you here because you're doing some really cool stuff. And HCC, is that what it's called now?
Yeah, Houston Community College.
HCC I think is very blessed to have you because I know, man, I could give you other spots in Texas that would grab you up in a second, because people want people like you, because you're not just an English professor, you're an English professor, but you're also so much more, and there's a lot of value in character, so the only, just from meeting you today and chatting with you, the only advice that I could give you is just to keep on doing what you're doing because what you're doing is really awesome, man. It's
sound like Forrest Gump. We just gotta. Was it Forrest Gump or Joe Dirte? Just gotta keep on keeping on.
Yeah. Mama told me don't talk to strangers.
Man, I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
Honestly, yeah, and it's we're all human beings on this crazy little planet, like. We never know what the next we never know what the next day brings.
It's very interesting to hear somebody kind of congratulate me because I think this is true of anything that I do in life, whether it's teaching, writing, doing martial arts. I am my own worst critic.
Honestly, yeah, I understand you.
So anytime I do anything, it's very difficult for me ever to look at what I've done well. I almost always just home in on the things that I did wrong and did poorly. And so I greatly appreciate your warm comments. That
absolutely. Yeah, no, I did. And I want you to take those as you may, because I don't say them lightly. And like I said, this is episode 21. So I've met a lot of people and talked to a lot of different people in different specialties. And you, sir, you're a very interesting character. I mean, I'm looking at the time right now. We're almost 2.5 hours into it, baby. Like,
are we? There we go.
Yeah. It wasn't. It was.
We didn't run out of ideas. We ran out of wine.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a hop, skip, and a jump to get here. But I guess we could go ahead and finish it up. You guys don't have to leave. We could hang out on the balcony or something. But
let's do it. But
let me just say, I really appreciate you for coming. And where can people find you at?
Absolutely. I want to say first and foremost, thank you for inviting me. As I was telling you, that this is my first in-person podcast, and this has been fantastic. So you're going to have me back.
Absolutely.
You said I was the 21st?
Yeah.
Oh, you got to have me back on 121.
121, dude, it's set. We'll set it right now, yeah.
But if people want to find me, they can find me on either Instagram or YouTube at The Holsey Style. That is the handle for both YouTube and Instagram.
The Holsey Style. How did you get to that name?
Yeah, it's kind of I'll keep it short because I know we're wrapping up here. Okay. But my last name biologically is Holsey. So as I said at the beginning of the podcast, I'm actually adopted. So I always have to explain this to my students because they expect Barry Ramirez is going to walk in the classroom and they think they're going to see somebody Hispanic, and here comes this white ginger motherfucker. But Holsey is actually the real last name I would have from my biological father and mother.
I love that.
It just seems like the Holsey style, Holseyan style, there's a little bit of alliteration, we say, right? They have very similar shapes and sounds, Holsey style. So the poet in me wants to come out a little bit there. It doesn't sound as good when you say the Ramirez style. So I was like, I'm just going to use the OG last name.
Nice. I love it. I love it. Release that creativity. Mr. Barry Ramirez, I really appreciate you for coming today.
Absolutely. Thank you much.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.